It is time for the. So last time we tried to read chapter 9, but while noticing it was insanely long, and I did a poll, which was, would you rather skip the story or no? Half of you voted yes, and half of you voted no. So I flipped a coin, which gives an epsilon to the result. Heads, which is on yes, no. Tails, which is on no. It landed on heads. So now it's 1 plus epsilon against 1. So therefore we skipped it. But I did promise to make a to send a summary. So here's a summary provided by Google Gemini. In Part 2, Chapter 9 of George Orwell's 1984, Winston finally receives the book, The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism, by the resistance leader Emmanuel Goldstein. This chapter serves as the intellectual backbone of the novel, explaining how the world of Oceania actually functions. Sorry, I should actually stop with this voice. The Mechanics of Power. Winston reads 2 lengthy excerpts from the book, which outline the party's philosophy. Ignores the strengths. This section details the historical struggle between the high, middle, and low classes. It explains that the party maintains power by using doublethink to manipulate reality and prevent the middle class from overthrowing them. War is Peace is the section that explains the 3 superstates, Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia, are in a state of permanent inconclusive war. The goal isn't victory, but to consume the surplus of consumer goods. By keeping the population in a state of constant shortage and fear, the party ensures people don't have the leisure or education to think for themselves. Now the realization. After reading, Winston feels a sense of relief. He realizes that while he understands how the party maintains its grips on society, he still doesn't understand why they desire such absolute power. And for the aftermath, the chapter ends on a peaceful, almost hopeful note. Winston watches a pro-woman hanging laundry outside and feels a connection to the future, believing that if there is hope, it lies in the pros. However, this calm is abruptly shattered when a voice from a hidden telescreen behind a picture of the walls mimics his thoughts, revealing that he and Julia have been caught! Oh no. This will be bad. Look at them. Look at the absolute buffoon. This is why you must really be careful when doing stuff. I should actually hide the Wordle. Sorry, chat. No more Wordle. Poof. Where is page 990? Where's that? Okay, we need. Hang on, there's no chapter 10. God damn it, why did I do that? Ah. I really thought there was like, you know what? Instead of that, we'll instead not skip the we'll only skip the meta book because that's what the poll was for. And now the book finished with this motive really consists. Winston became aware of silence as one becomes aware of a new sound. It seemed to him that Julia had been very still for some time past. She was lying on her side, naked from the waist upwards, with her cheek pillowed on her hand and one dark lock tumbling across her eyes. Her bleep rose and fell slowly and regularly. Julia, no answer. Julia, are you awake? No answer. She was asleep. He shut the book, put it carefully on the floor, lay down, and pulled the coverlet on both of them. He reflected, not learned the ultimate secret. He understand how, he did not understand why. Chapter 1, like Chapter 3, had not actually told him anything that he did not know. It had merely systematized the knowledge that he possessed already. But after reading it, he knew better than before that he was not mad. Being in the minority, even a minority of one, did not make you mad. There was truth, and there was untruth. And if you clung to truth even against the whole world, you were not mad. A yellow beam from the sinking sun slanted in through the window and fell across the pillow. He shut his eyes, the sun on his face and the girl's smooth body touching his own gave him a strong, sleepy, confident feeling. He was safe. Everything was alright. He fell asleep, murmuring, "Sanity is not statistical," with the feeling that this remark contained in it a profound wisdom. When he woke, it was the sensation of having slept for a long time, but a glance at the old-fashioned clock told him that it was only 20:30. He lay dozing for a while, then the usual Dean Blanche singing struck up from the yard below. "It was only an hopeless fancy, it passed like a night would die, but look at the word and the dream they stirred, the thought my die." The driveling song seemed to have kept its popularity. You still heard it all over the place. It had outlived the hate song. Julia woke at the sound, stretched herself luxuriously, and got out of bed. "I'm hungry," she said. "Let's make some more coffee." Bam! "The stove's gone out and the water's cold," she picked the stove up and shook it. "There's no oil in it." "We can get some from old Charrington, I expect." "The funny thing is I made sure it was full. I'm going to put my clothes on," she added. "It seems to have got colder." Winston also got up and dressed himself. The indefatigable voice sang on. "They sighed that time heals all things. They sighed you can always forget, but the smiles and the tears across the years, they twist my heartstrings yet." As he fastened the belt of his overalls, he strolled across to the window. The sun must have gone down behind the houses. It was not shining into the yard any longer. The flagstones were wet as though they had just been washed, and he had the feeling that the sky had been washed too. So fresh and pale was the blue between the chimney pots. Tirelessly the woman marched to and fro, corking and uncorking herself, singing and falling silent, and pegging out more diapers, and more and yet more. He wondered whether she took in washing for a living, or was merely the slave of 20 or 30 grandchildren. Julia had come across to his side. Together they gazed down with a sort of fascination at the sturdy figure below. As he looked at the woman in her characteristic attitude, her thick arms reaching up for the line, her powerful mare-like buttocks protruded, it struck him for the first time that she was beautiful. It had never before occurred to him that the body of a woman of 50, blown up to monstrous dimension by childbearing, then hardened, roughened by work till it was coarse and begrained like an overripe turnip, could be beautiful. But was so, and after all, he thought, why not? The solid, contourless body like a block of granite, and the rasping red skin bore the same relation to the body of a girl as the rosehip to the rose. Why should the fruit be held inferior to the flower? "She's beautiful," he murmured. "She's a meter across the hips easily," said Julia. "That is her style of beauty," said Winston. He held Julia's supple waist easily encircled by his arm. From the hip to the knee, her flank was against his. Out of their bodies no child would ever come. That was the one thing they could never do. Only by word of mouth, from mind to mind, could they pass on the secret. The woman down there had no mind. She had only strong arms, a warm heart, and a fertile belly. He wondered how many children she had given birth to. It might easily be 15. She had had her moment flowering, a year perhaps of wild rose beauty, and then she had suddenly swollen like a fertilized fruit and grown hard and red and coarse, and then her life had been laundering, scrubbing, darning, cooking, sleeping, polishing, mending, scrubbing, laundering, first for children, then for grandchildren, over 30 unbroken years. At the end of it she was still singing. The mystical reverence that he felt for her was somehow mixed up with the aspect of the pale, cloudless sky, stretching away behind the chimney pots into interminable distance. It was curious to think that the sky was the same for everybody, in Eurasia or East Asia as well as here. And the people under the sky were also very much the same everywhere. All over the world, hundreds of thousands of millions of people. Just like this. People ignorant of one another's existence, held apart by walls of hatred and lies, and yet almost exactly the same. People who had never learned to think, but who were storing up in their hearts and bellies and muscles the power that they would one day overturn the world. If there was hope, it lay in the proles. Without having reading to the end of the book, he knew that must be Goldstein's final message. The future belonged to the proles, and could he be sure that when their time came, the world they constructed would not be just as alien as to him, Winston Smith, as the world of the party? Yes, because at the least it would be a world of sanity. Where there is equality, there can be sanity. Sooner or later it would happen. Strengths would change into consciousness. The trolls were immortal, you could not doubt it. When you looked at that valiant figure in the yard, in the end their awakening would come. And until that happened, though it might be 1,000 years, they would stay alive against all the odds, like birds passing on from body to body, which the party did not share and could not kill. Do you remember, he said, the thrush that sang to us the first day at the edge of the wood? He wasn't singing to us, said Julia. He was singing to please himself. Not even that, he was just singing. The birds sang, the trolls sang, the party did not sing. All around the world, in London and New York, in Africa and Brazil, and in the mysterious forbidden land beyond the frontiers, in the streets of Paris and Berlin, in the villages of the endless Russian plain, in the bazaars of China and Japan, everywhere stood the same unconquerable figure made monstrous by work and childbearing, toiling from birth to death and still singing. Out of those mighty loins, a race of conscious beings must one day come. You were the dead. Theirs was the future. But you could share that in the future to keep it alive, by the mind as they kept alive the body, and passed on the secret doctrine that 2 plus 2 make 4. We are the dead, he said. We are the dead, echoed Julia dutifully. You are the dead, said an iron voice behind them. You sprang apart. Winston's entrails seemed to have turned into ice. He could see the whites all round the irises of Julia's eyes. His face had turned a milky yellow. The smear of rouge that was still on each cheekbone stood out sharply, almost as though as unconnected with the skin beneath. You are the dead, repeated the iron voice. It was behind the picture, breathed Julia. It was behind the picture, said the voice. Remain exactly where you are. Make no movement until you are ordered. Yeah, that's exactly the part I was thinking of that I accidentally spoiled. It was starting at last. They could do nothing except stand gazing into one another's eyes. To run for life, to get out of the house before it was too late. No such thought occurred to them. Unthinkable to disobey the iron voice from the wall. There was a snap as though a catch had been turned back, and a crash of breaking glass. The picture to the floor, uncovering the telescreen behind it. Now they can see us, said Julia. Now we can see you, said the voice. Stand out in the middle of the room, stand back to back, clasp your hands behind your head, being at one another. They were not touching, but it seemed to him that he could feel Julia's body shaking. Or perhaps it was merely the shaking of his own. He could just stop his teeth from chattering, but his knees were beyond his control. There was sound of trampling boots below, inside the house and outside. The yard seemed to be full of men. Something was being dragged across the stones. The woman singing had stopped abruptly. There was a long rolling clang as though the washboard had been flung across the yard, and then a confusion of angry shouts which ended in a yell of pain. The house is surrounded, said Winston. The house is surrounded, said the voice. He heard Julia snap her teeth together. I suppose we may as well say goodbye, she said. You may as well say goodbye, said the voice, and then another quite different voice, a thin, cultivated voice, which Winston had the impression of having heard before, struck in. And by the way, while we're on the subject, here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head. Something crashed onto the bed behind Winston's back. The head of a ladder had been thrust through the window and had burst into frame. Someone was climbing through the window. There was a stampede of boots up the stairs. The room was full of stolid men in black uniforms, with iron-shod boots on their feet and truncheons in their hands. Winston was not trembling any longer. Even his eyes he barely moved. One thing alone mattered: to keep still, and not give them an excuse to hit you. A man with a smooth, prize fighter's jowl, in which the mouth was only a slit paused opposite him, balancing his truncheon meditatively. Between thumb and forefinger, Winston met his eyes. The feeling of bleakness. With one's hand behind one's head and one's face and body all exposed, it was almost unbearable. The man returned and the tip of a white tongue licked the place where his lips should have been and then passed on. There was another crash. Someone had picked up the glass paperweight from the table and smashed it to pieces on the hearth system. The fragment of coral, a tiny crinkle of pink like sugar. Rosebud from a cake, it rolled across the mat. How small, thought Winston, how small it always was. There was a gasp and a thump behind him, and he received a violent kick on the ankle, which nearly flung him off his balance. One of the men had smashed his fist into Julia's solar plexus, doubling her up like a pocket ruler. She was thrashing about on the floor, fighting for breath. Winston dared not to turn his head even by a millimeter, but sometimes her livid, gasping face came within the angle of his vision. Even in his terror, it was as though he could feel the pain in his own body, the deadly pain which nevertheless was less urgent than the struggle to get back her breath. He knew what it was like, the terrible, agonizing pain, which was there all the while, but could not be suffered yet, because before all else it was necessary to be able to breathe. Then two of the men hoisted her by the knees and shoulders and carried her out of the room like a sack. Winston had a glimpse of her face upside down, yellow and contorted, with the eyes shut, and still with a smear of rouge on either cheek. Then there was the last he saw of her. He stood dead still. No one had hit him yet. Thoughts which came on of their own accord but seemed totally uninteresting, began to flit through his mind. He wondered whether they had gotten Mr. Charrington. He wondered what they had done to a woman in the yard. He noticed that he badly wanted to urinate and felt a faint surprise because he had done so only 2 or 3 hours ago. He noticed that the clock on the mantelpiece said 9, meaning 21. But the light seemed too strong. Would not the light be fading at 21 hours on August evening? He wondered whether, after all, he and Julia had mistaken the time, had slept the clock round and thought it was 20:30 when really it was not 8:30 on the following morning. But he did not pursue the thought further. It was not interesting. There was another lighter step in the passage. Mr. Charrington came into the room. The demeanor of the black uniformed man suddenly became more subdued. Something had also changed in Mr. Charrington's appearance. His eye fell on the fragment of the glass paperweight. Pick up those pieces, he said sharply. A man stood up to obey. The Cockney accent has disappeared. Winston suddenly realized whose voice it was that he heard a few moments ago on the tongue speed. Mr. Charrington was still wearing his old velvet jacket, but his hair, which had been almost white, had turned black. Also, he was not wearing his spectacles. He gave Winston a single sharp glance, as though verifying his identity, and paid no more attention to him. He was still recognizable, but he was not the same person any longer. His body had straightened and seemed to have grown bigger. His face has undergone only tiny changes that he nevertheless worked a complete transformation. The black eyebrows were less bushy. The wrinkles were gone. The whole lines of the face seemed to have altered. Even the nose seemed shorter. It was the alert, cold face of a man of about 35. It occurred to Winston that for the first time in his life, he was looking with knowledge at a member of the Thought Police. And that concludes Part 2 of 1984. Yeah. And it's not even time to even end the stream. It's like, hang on, so how far are we in the book? If I open the book again, I want to see my percentage. 72%. Yeah, so we're like past a third of the way. And then, after that, we may need like a new background like usual. Do I have to turn this into a gaming stream? There's like... How's everyone in the stream? There is just one person watching, and it's alright. There's not much going on, but yeah. What do I do with the rest of the 40 minutes we got? Because I accidentally spoiled the story, and I made a useless stream. Well, we can design the new background together, but that might ruin the First of all, yes, if I would make the new background, then I would probably spoil everything. Yeah. Hmm. Hey, Gemini! I'm on a stream right now, and I was supposed to read part of chapter 10 before I realized it doesn't exist. I got 40 minutes left. What do I do? The center is around part 2 of 1984. Send. This is a classic live stream panic moment since Jorbell part 2. No, no, no. It goes up to chapter 9. Yeah, Gemini is stupid because they said part 2 actually ends at chapter 10. But no. Oh, we can analyze. We got the Ghost Team Deep Dive. We got Forensic Foreshadowing. Predict the Ministry of Love. Interactive. No. Man, I really don't have the best mind for this. Oh, hey, we can study the foreshadowing. You know what? Let's be a little detective and figure out what can bring back that Mr. Charrington was a member of the Thought Police. Like, okay, so go back to the previous chapters of part 2 and look for signs that Mr. Charrington was a member of the Thought Police all along. Point out his interested old things. His lack of a telescreen in the room and the nursery rhyme about the chopper to chop off your head. And that would probably... So first off, the part where this says chopper to chop off your head basically is like what the Thought Police like kinda does, I think. Like, you know how they like... The Thought Police, very strict. When they chop... So Thought Police, the moment you do a thought crime, it is serious, quick patch up, murdering. Basically, you think of something against the party, you're single-handedly taken, I don't know, and then you're hanged or something, well, in the end, you're vaporized. Basically, all existence of yourself is gone. No one knows you, in the end. I don't know if I just fumbled the stream or not, but... No, I just ended. It's like, I have a game jam to do, but I really don't mind doing this. I could really, I could play in the background, but again, I would spoil part 3, so... I am not a good public speaker. And plus, there's not even an audience. There's just one person. I'll just check something real quick on this thing. Well, let's end it like I did in part 1. And that's right, we are not finished. We're going to continue. With part 3, only 6 chapters this time, but hang on, I want to check how long it is. How long is part 1? 32 minutes. Now, part 2. 48 minutes. Part 3. 31 minutes. Part 4. 17 minutes. Part 5. 10 minutes. Chapter 6. 23 minutes. Yeah, so it'll be like, I don't know, like 3 streams for this, so you better not miss them! How did I end this? And this time it's not a mental break. And thanks to like the I don't know how many people that actually came to the stream, like I don't know. It's been like, if we sum up 56 plus 30 plus 23 plus 23 plus 34, that's 166 views on part 1. And now for part 2. 20 plus 11 plus 11 plus 2 plus 4 plus 1. Yeah, thanks for all the 50 views from this from specifically this one. Yep, hi. Thanks for being here. Yeah, there's like only like 50 people, but like there's barely any stuff going on to do. I do not organize things well. Yeah, you know what? Sayonara and see you in part 3. Wham! And then I will do the background change after the stream ends. Because, yeah.